Drop the beat.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
Yeah.
Season 2.
Episode 16, the Master Keys Podcast. I'm Chandler Haliburton.
I'm Neal and Andreino.
Thanks for following along. Thanks for listening. Been crazy week. A lot of engagement online. Super pumped about it. This is episode 16. I think I said that.
Yeah.
And today we got a guest, Sarah Larbi. Super cool story. Very impressive investor out of Ontario.
She started with a full-time job, got
Yeah.
into it, bought a few properties, and she used a little different strategy. In the same sense, she did the buy, renovate, refinance setup, but she used short and midterm rentals to really elevate her game and allow her to actually walk away from her job and then focus on what she's doing. So we're going to bring her on. She's going to explain all of that, what she has to offer, and then we're going to go over a bunch of stuff that the government's proposing right now and the Liberal government's offering and saying that's going to help fix the market or cool the market or make it easier for people to buy in. So we want to get her take on it, where she's in Ontario and they probably have one of the most aggressive markets in Canada. So we can kind of see what she thinks.
It's super cool. Again, like you said, she was working a standard 9-to-5 job. She started with one little rental property and then got more and then got some short terms, went a little bit more towards cottage country and is doing kind of midterm, like not nightly, but maybe, a month stay and finding that really lucrative. And that's allowing her to get into some kind of cottage development projects, and she just purchased a 22-unit building the other day. So very cool. And I think for those of you out there who are interested in short-term rentals and just want to hear another story of how someone else did it, and just a practical example of how you can start off small and in a very short period of time do some pretty cool things. She was able to quit her job. Her partner now may be leaving his job as well. And it's awesome. We love seeing stories like this because we both believe that real estate empowers people to have freedom in their life. And so, Sarah Larbi, and we're going to have links below to all of her social media, and she's getting in now to coaching and lecturing and having these resorts. So if you're interested in a resort this August too, she's going to have information about that, a real estate resort. So we'll bring her on now. Okay, we're going to dive right in here. Our guest today, Sarah Larbi. Sarah, why don't we start with you telling us a bit, or our listeners rather, a bit about yourself and what you do and how you got to this point.
Awesome. So I will say thank you for having me on. The tables are turned. You guys were on my podcast recently as well. So I'm in the hot seat today. But I am a real estate investor, real estate developer. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. And started in 2013. I love the BRRRR strategy, so I have a lot of that. I'm also working on a resort and many things in between. Also a podcast host, TV host of the Everyday Investor, and co-founder of the Right Club, and all of the good stuff that involves real estate investing, and also teaching others along the way.
All of which we'll link in our, however we figure this out. The team will link all that stuff too in this video so people can check it out because there's so much awesome stuff going on with that. What were you doing before that?
I've been in sales for 10 years prior to that. And then I went to school for nursing prior to that. Graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and decided to go into sales because I wanted to be able to create my own income.
Nice. And
so many different corporate types of sales jobs. Last 5 years I was with a great company, Lavazza Coffee, love coffee, and then realized it was time to go and leave the 9-to-5 in corporate world, and it was the best decision I've ever made.
And I was creeping you a little bit. You maintained that job though for a bit while getting into real estate investing and while starting all of this?
Yeah, so I started in 2013. I was working at a different company, and started acquiring properties as I was still working full time. And October 2020, realized that I was good to go. Yeah. I didn't have a plan. I was just like, okay, this is, I was on my dock having some wine. It was like probably June or something along those lines, and looked through, okay, what do I have in terms of like income coming in? What's my net worth? And am I where I want to be? And it just made sense to be at that point where my job was getting in the way of my real estate. It was getting in the way of my lifestyle. And I'm like, I did real estate to be able to do something and have that freedom early rather than work for 30 plus years. So, gave my notice. I gave them lots of notice. I was, 6 months probably from the time that I made the decision, told my boss, to the time that I officially, my last day was October 1st of 2020. So, and it's funny because I didn't know I was going to even get into development when I left. or different things or build a resort or any of that stuff. It's just, I knew that, this was keeping me from achieving my lifestyle goals and bigger goals as well.
Yeah, and you had established something so you could make that move. You didn't just make the jump prior to having like a backing and an income that you could support yourself with.
Yeah.
You've alluded to this twice now, and I'm super curious. The resort. Can you flush that out a little bit and tell us about that?
Yeah, so I bought this piece of land, negotiated a vendor take back in, I want to say it was March of 2021, closed on it in I want to say it was last July or end of June 29th. And it's just 6 acres of land.
Where at?
Pure land. In the Kawartha, so in Ontario, in a little town called Coboconk. And it was, 1.1 mil for, small town.
Yeah.
Even people in Ontario don't necessarily know it, but you say Kawarthas, they're like, oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Prior to that, I was actually, what piqued my interest, I ended up seeing another piece of land that had some trailers on it. And I'm like, oh, we can do some like little tiny homes and this and that. And that was on the floodplain, so it didn't work. But I started looking for the right zoning, and this piece of land came about. It was on the MLS, on the market, and negotiated, bought it. And now we are building a boutique resort. So it's going to be a 5-year plan. This summer, we're going to have cottages. We're going to do 3 every single year. And then we also bought an acre next to it. We're going to build a bigger cottage there.
Oh, shit.
But it's one of those fun projects. Like, I always wanted to do something creative. Real estate can be super fun. It should be boring for the majority of it, but once in a while you could do a super fun project. And this is one of those, but we're going to theme them all differently inside. So they're going to have a theme. They're going to be like nice and upscale. We're going to do some retreats, like real estate investor and entrepreneur retreats, corporate events.
Very cool. That's super cool. Yeah.
Have you been in short-term rentals before that? Had you done any before, or is this like a complete and total dive, a new world for you?
No, I love the short-term, midterm stuff. I mean, I think, that is one of the reasons that I was able to boost my cash flow to leave a little bit earlier. Some of the cottages, like, for example, in the Kawarthas, they were giving me $750 a night, high season as an example. So that helps a lot.
Nice. Wow.
And
Love it.
and then I also have a couple midterm units as well that are probably some of the best cash flowing properties I have, because there's a lot of people that are in between houses, they're doing construction, or they have an insurance claim and they need a place to live for like 30 days
totally.
at a time.
A few $1,000 a month is pretty, easy to hit.
It's a huge, so that's a huge cash flow boost. So the midterm rental, I don't charge $750. That's more for like the waterfront stuff. But I'll tell you, you could do, like, if I just look at my last 3 months on a house in Burlington I have, for example, and each unit is bringing, about $3,000 to $3,500 a month. Yeah. And it's pretty much solid. Again, you have to be in the right area. You have to be in the right spot. But that entire, the basement is a 1-bedroom. The top floor is a 2-bedroom. I can't get that long term.
Yeah, no way.
Just to take one little step back, because again, to catch some people up onto your background. So, what was the first property you bought?
Yeah, it was a little tiny bungalow that's maybe 450 square feet, built from the 1800s. Somehow it still stands. It was the cheapest thing I could find back then, and that's how we got started. Put the 20% down and figured out, okay, well, my husband was not keen on doing this in the beginning, mostly because, he's a police officer and saw the worst of the worst, many people, including tenants. So we started off with his sister, and she was our first tenant. Made all the mistakes in the book. I'm like, hey, how much can you afford to pay? And then she's like, this is the cost. I'm like, sounds good. I know I'm cash flowing, but I was, we didn't even know what we didn't know back then. And we learned so much along the way, made lots of mistakes along the way. And ironically, she was the one that never paid on time and trashed the place that we had to re-renovate once she left.
No.
Now wasn't so good back then.
Yeah, that's
Jesus.
I'm not at all surprised to hear that, man. So you went from that was just a single family home, and then what? If you kind of quickly give
Straight
a synopsis
to buying a
of,
resort.
Yeah, how you went from there to eventually resort, and you were also mentioning a 22 unit that you just picked up this month.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was working full time. So back in the day, we were doing the buy and hold, and then it got more competitive. So we started doing some renos, and then went from renos to doing some conversions and the BRRRR strategy. And then I just realized that there was a way to do this a lot faster. And that was the BRRRR strategy, right? Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. And then started turning some of those into short-term, midterm rentals. Bought a few cottages. And, by the time that I had left, between the tenants turning over, because obviously the screening piece is important, but that market rents going up and the midterm rentals plus the short-term rentals, it was good enough. I think I had, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14 units of my own at the point that I decided to leave. And then after I left, found a mentor who actually was on my podcast, and I'm like, hey, can I hire you? And he didn't do this back then, to learn about development. And so we ended up having, some time going through it. And then I found this great piece of land. We're building 6 2-unit townhomes on, and then the resort was, one of 3 development projects that I came across. And when you don't have a lot of experience in something and somebody's got 30 plus years of experience, you invite them in for the ride, which is essentially what I did for that. And then just recently, I have a couple friends, we decided to partner together just to scale a lot more. One's a BCIN designer, one's a contractor with like 30 plus people on his team. And for me, my lifestyle was super important. And so I think like that is a good partnership, because I could still hang out at the cottage. I can bring some JV partners or people or money into the deal. And they do a lot of the heavy lifting while I can still, be remote, be at the cottage. For me, I think we were talking about this before, but May 2-4 to Labor Day, I'm on the dock. I don't want to be, I don't want to be working on anything that involves me being indoors. So podcasts and webinars and that kind of stuff. But ultimately the cottage just came from one of the development opportunities that we came across on MLS.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you were working your 9 to 5. You started with a very small property and then got another, and then got into the short-term rentals. Once you hit about 13, you realized you had enough cash flow that you could actually leave your 9 to 5 job. And then you've gotten a little bit more into land here and brought on a couple partners to help you scale in that direction. So that's
Get development going on.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to love hearing that, because you're a real normal person able to do these things, and I think that's really inspiring to other people who are looking to do the same.
The short term, I was going to say, the short terms, I feel like we're a big part of your ability to do that. Like, just to kind of harp on that, because we really haven't talked much about it, but it sounds like that. And for us, like, our cash flow is made through our jobs, and we have maintained those jobs through this whole process. But I think what you're doing actually might be smarter and might allow you to scale at a faster pace now, because you can focus purely on the real estate. Just a quick last question I'll ask before we start going into some of the questions we had outlined for you, and the topics we wanted to hit. Are you managing your short-term rentals yourself, or do you have, like, is there a third-party company handling it?
No, I actually self-manage everything. And I think if you have the right systems in place and the right people in those areas, it can be, a lot easier than a lot of people are thinking. So if you find a really good cleaner, which, I had to go through a few, depending on where the locations are. But if you have somebody that can do like some like minor maintenance as well as like some of the yard work, as well as like replenishing the stock, like it can be very easy to just, not give away 20 to 25%, because that's the rate that it's going, right? Short-term, midterm rentals, you're paying some 25%. So, communicating with those clients, accepting and rejecting the ones, by the way, like you can reject anyone for anything. Like I rejected some people because there's too many people that wanted to rent. And I'm like, I could do that. You got to be very careful how you do it from a long-term standpoint. But because, this is not part of the Residential Tenancies Act or the landlord and tenant rules, you can essentially accept and decline whoever you want. But, it can be done. Yes, if you don't want to do any of that stuff, you can hire it out. But ultimately, like, I don't think it takes, in the grand scheme of things, of everything I do, it takes maybe, I don't know, in total 4 hours a month.
Right. Yeah. I mean, systems are everything, and I can tell. I couldn't help but notice you've got your books color coded back there. So probably like a very that type of personality, which is great. It's certainly a skill you need to have. So how many of your properties are more rural, for lack of a better term?
I mean, the Kawarthas are essentially where I do the developments. That's where the cottages are. That's where the resort's going to be. And so, all the stuff from like the last 2 years minus the new stuff that we just bought this last month is in the Kawarthas. My prior portfolio is in Ontario, so like in Brantford and Hamilton. I'm sure you guys have heard of Hamilton, Burlington, so kind of like the west end of the GTA into the
Right.
I would say 2 hours from Toronto or less, but they're not like super rural. Like even the Kawarthas are, I mean, they're developing quite a bit. It's still close to Peterborough. Peterborough's, growing. So it's not like in the middle of nowhere exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But you got a wider range there because it's such a big area of the country, right? Awesome. All right, we're going to dive into some questions. I think that's super cool. I already feel like that's going to be a great little segment, like how Sarah quit her job and, is now building a resort through short-term rentals effectively. Like that's super cool to hear.
Yeah, I think it's attainable too for a lot of people, and I think we're in a place like in Atlantic Canada where it's such a tourism hotspot that we can do it. And every area, like you're saying, you're not necessarily going to a spot within where you live, but where people do go to vacation or get away for a little
Unless
bit.
we find a way to ruin it.
Which we will.
do know how we are good at ruining things. We just say like, let's get the government more involved in this.
Ban
That'll work out
Airbnb
well.
in Nova Scotia.
Yeah. I'm sure that'll work out perfectly fine. Government knows best.
At some point the rules change, right? This is like, and just to go back on this, like this midterm opportunity, I think like is still untapped. And at some point the government will ruin it because that's just what they do. But like, it's that like 28 days or less is often, subject to these bylaws, but above that,
it's that 31st day.
It's a whole different round. And I will tell you that I wouldn't have done this before December 2020 in Ontario. And I can't speak for all of the, every single province, but one of the things that my paralegal and I had many discussions over, and he sent me this case law, and it shows that like somebody didn't leave the property on Airbnb or whatever site that they booked on. And, they had to go through the board, and then the board, what's actually interesting is they ruled in our favor, saying that anything that is booked, from a nightly stay through a site like Airbnb and VRBO, like even if it's past that 28-day mark, is not subject to the RTA. So what you do is you have your booking proof, and then you have your case law. And he's like, I've called the cops and they're just essentially trespassing, and they remove them. And there's a
love it.
So it's like it's changed for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
then
awesome.
and at some point, the government will come around and things will change again. But right now, it's a great start.
It's a Wild West.
A little bit, yeah.
So I guess, to segue for our first question, really, with this being your income, real estate's your income, that's what you're living off of, interest rates are popping up. Do you have a concern that the pace and the amount that these are popping up, it's going to impact your monthly cash flow to a point where it changes how you operate? Or is it like, I'm just going to grow fast enough that I'm going to outpace this interest rate growth? Because obviously we've all seen a few hikes we've had, and now every bank's kind of suggesting that we're going to have a few more coming. And I know for me, like I was just saying yesterday, I was looking at my whole portfolio, and I kind of had an end of year target to have a certain amount of units finished and a certain cash flow from that. And now I put in the new interest rate, and I'm like, wow, that impacted it like a fair bit.
Same too with development. While you're waiting to break ground on those things, and the rates just ticking up. They don't really hold that rate for you.
Yeah.
It changed the model a little bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I don't think I ever like put exactly what the current today's rate would have been when I stress test my stuff, right? Like, am I calculating 6%? No, but like I was probably, at a 3 to 3.5% interest rates as an example. So you probably do want to increase a little bit. Are they going to increase? Of course they're going to increase. I think part of, what I would suggest is like having the long term as well as the midterm and the short term allows you to at least pivot in the short and midterm, without having all the regulations around the long term. What you can, like, for example, in Ontario, we can only increase 1.2% for anything that was built before December of 2018. November 5th, 2018. So again, if the market rents increase and you've got a new build, if the market rents increase and you've got your midterm, short term, you could probably go and adjust your rates to help. And from a long-term rental standpoint, I mean, look, here's the thing: is that if you're buying for cash flow, and you're at the bottom third of the market, I never really buy it like the luxury types of things, and I will change and I will make better properties that need work. I don't think that like will be hit as hard as maybe somebody who's got, a $2 million mortgage and, they're barely breaking even, and then all
per
of a
unit.
sudden on that. Like if my mortgages are, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, it's a lot different than a $2 million mortgage.
Yeah.
And I think with that, I mean, if you're looking at like a 0.25 increase, what is that, like $18 on every 100 grand per month?
Yeah. It's not a crazy amount. With that, would you say typically you're buying on like a variable open product and then going to a fixed term, or do you find when you finish, do you refinance variable? Like, or are you finding like you're not going to find much impact? Like I know for me, I had a bunch of variable product that I'm already feeling the squeeze on, and a bunch of renewals coming up. And now I'm kind of like, I wonder if I should do a fixed term product. And I've always preached variable open. But now I'm seeing this, and I'm a little bit concerned. So I'm just out of curiosity, is most of your money variable open, or do you usually start with that, then finish up your project and take out it fixed?
I still like the flexibility.
Yeah.
And, I think right now, as we're filming this and recording this, the difference between the variable and the fixed wouldn't even make sense. Like with like even a certain number of increases from a variable standpoint with where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so, I had to look at it with my mortgage broker, and like, it probably still makes sense for us to stay variable. Is there a chance in the future I might go fixed? Maybe, but I don't think it's time to, I wouldn't panic over it. I think ultimately if you go in your fixed today, you'll have to look at the difference, but I don't think it's in people's best interest per se, unless you can't sleep at night if rates are going to go up, because they will. And you have to look at like where you're at from a variable standpoint versus where you would be from a fixed standpoint, and then just assume like 4 increases and where you're going to be from there. Are you better off?
100%. Interesting. All right, we've harped on the government a little bit, how they ruin everything. And they've been busy for the last couple of weeks. So today we wanted to dive into some of it. And I think we sent over a couple of questions to you. So we just want to get your take on it, because Chandler and I will go on and give our take. And we have a very similar opinion. So it's good to get somebody in a different part of Canada doing a slightly different business. It's all real estate, but you're doing it in a different way than I think we're doing it. So I'd be curious to hear what you think on these. So maybe we just start harping through them.
Yeah, and some of these are proposed or tossed out in theory and not yet into legislation. But housing was a big part of the federal platforms, and the Liberals had a lot of these changes in mind, and now they're actually talking about rolling them out. So, number 1, a ban on foreign investment in the residential real estate market for 2 years. So this would be foreigners outside of Canada.
Foreign nationals, yeah. And they're unable to buy unless they are moving here, have a PR. I think students were potentially allowed, but otherwise you can't just buy and not live here, like for the purpose of parking cash or investment. So do you think there's actually any value in that in saving the market? Like, is that they're saying they're doing it because it's going to help out first-time home buyers and locals buy homes? Do you think that's actually going to have merit? And like for us, our percentage of foreign buyers is so low. I don't think we really think so, but I think everyone here in Ontario and BC are like hot spots for foreign money.
Here's my opinion. I think it's a lot of BS and ways to just get votes from people that don't understand how it is.
Yep.
So in terms of a 2-year ban, I mean, I think that we have such an inventory issue anyways, like, and you look at how many, I don't think they really realize like how little amount of that, those foreign buyers are actually buying. And then could they circumvent them? I mean, people are resourceful. Like, we're all resourceful. Like, the way that I'm thinking, I'm like, could you do a Canadian corporation? Could you do a JV with a Canadian that's in the country?
100%. Someone's going to be like, this is ingenious. I'm going to be a proxy buyer for all these people.
Yeah. I mean, like at the end of the day, I don't think that anything that they've ever done from a real estate standpoint has ever worked in the manner that they were is going to work. And unfortunately, it's just going to be a matter of, in my opinion, letting people build enough and letting people convert if they want to convert, remove the red tape. It's an inventory issue, right? And it's I think it's an immigration issue too. If you want to reduce the price, it's supply and demand. I'm not an economist, but this is just basic stuff. And so, can it do something where if they're banning somebody, or people from a 2-year ban on investments, if you're not from here, I think that's just good. Like, for somebody that has no clue what they're doing to be like, they got my vote. That's cool. Is it anything? No, I don't think so. Like, it might for like a month or two as people like figure out how they're going to circumvent it, and they're going to go find a solution.
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, it sounds slightly xenophobic, but like it sounds, to people who are like, oh yeah, this must be what's going on. These foreign investors are driving the price up. It's such a small part of
Less than
99% of like Canada's market. It is not even relevant. Obviously in Toronto and Vancouver, it's a bit more prevalent. But I think it's kind of a PR thing. This one I'd be curious to hear your take. Have you ever flipped a property? But this rumors about a full taxation on the profits as business income if a property is sold within 12 months of the purchase.
I mean, I again, in my opinion, and this is not politically correct necessarily, but like I think it's all a bunch of BS to make it look like they're doing something, because you can put things in a corporation and you can, like what's the difference between what they're being, like an actual active flipper is being taxed right now on that, but they're probably not putting in their name. They're putting in the corporation. So sure, if they want to get some votes, that again, I don't think that there's anything different from before. Like, well, they
put a formalized timeline, which I'll give them a little bit of credit for, because I get this question a lot of like, how long do I have to hold this house for? And I'm like, it's a gray area. There's not actually a set amount of time.
Well, that's because it was always that's people talking about capital gains, though. Yeah. Because there's two types of flippers. There's institutional flippers who are companies who pay HST and who claim this as business income already. And then there's mom and pop operations who do one flip a year while it's their primary residence and sell it. I think
there's a lot of them.
And that is the vast majority of flippers. There's maybe, I can't even think. There's some people who put signs up around town to buy distressed houses, but there's very few actual institutional business run flipping in
it's
our
too hard
area.
to guarantee your inventory.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of little people who do it just as a way to get ahead. So you're taking this tool that a lot of people are doing in order to make housing affordable and in order to play catch up in a rapidly moving market, and then effectively taking it away from them. It's counterintuitive because it's going to be really problematic for young people who maybe aren't flipping in the business sense, but are buying a home, fixing it up, going to live there for 6-8 months, and then selling it. Well, now they're going to have to live there for 12 months, which is fine.
Right.
But then again, to your point, there's either the people who are already doing it above board and paying taxes, and then there's younger people who are just trying to move between homes kind of quickly and might have a great opportunity to do so and cash in, that are now going to be hammered. And it's like, those are the people you want to come after? I don't get it.
Yeah. They're trying to come after the flippers. I'll tell you, I think Ontario is a little bit different, like from a flipping standpoint. Maybe just because I'm in the industry, but it is a lot of people that are doing it for a living, but they're already paying the taxes. And so, but yeah, you're right. Like they're crushing the little people that are trying to get ahead. Like you said, the people that are just getting started. And again, I don't think it's going to make a big difference. So like it's 8 months versus 12 months. You just do a long close.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. I feel like it's been like 12 months in one day. There's going to be a bunch of
Yeah, and I find it's the capital gains question that we get more. And it's like, well, either you're doing this as your home and you're living in it and you're fixing it and you're going to sell it, and you might sell 5 homes over 7 years to get ahead. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's legitimate, capital gains is kind of the honor system. If it's legitimate, you're free and clear. But if you are doing this actively as a business, never living in the property, it's like, yeah, you already should have been paying business tax and potentially HST and all these things, depending on the scope of the renovation. So it might put a little bit more attention on it to tighten things up in our market, where it hasn't really been addressed maybe as well as has been in yours. But the idea that this will slow or change anything, if anything, it's going to hurt some smaller people, I think.
I agree. I think they just need to get rid of some of the gray area, because it's always been something that's not formalized. So I think there's some value in this, but I do think they're targeting the wrong people. I think there'll be a lot of exemptions that need to be put on this. If they put a bunch of exemptions that allow certain people to do it, I think that makes it okay. This next one is interesting. Assignment sales will be levied GST and HST.
Yeah. Well,
which I think assignment's way bigger in Ontario. Like, I feel like, because we don't have a ton of condo developments here, and I feel like that's where most assignments take place. And that's also where the GST HST becomes more applicable too, because they have. I don't even know how the GST HST works in Ontario. How does that work in Ontario right now? GST HST on pre-condos. Like, is that basically just included in the purchase price, or they don't charge HST sales tax on new property?
There is a rebate. Yeah. So I don't this is not really my strategy per se, but from what my understanding is that there's a rebate. I think it's like 20. So like, depending if the developer, has it included or not. If you are renting it, there's a rebate, 24 grand, and then you got to like go and get it back from the government, as an example. But I think what they're talking about here with the assignment sale is you're buying something with like a 10% down and you're hoping to, have it appreciate before it closes, and then sign the contract. And I think that there was a bit of a gray area at that point, and I think they're closing the loop on that, of being able to, now charge the tax on there. And I don't think that, like, again, I'm not an accountant, but I don't think that was being looked at as carefully. Because if they're making $100,000 off flipping a contract, yeah, there should be tax on there.
This is one I actually agree with, because this was true speculative buying. Like, this was nothing other than speculative buying. And so when you are purchasing something with the sole plan to resell it, like, that is a business endeavor, which is a bit different than, especially when the thing doesn't even exist, right? You're purchasing pre-construction. And we had someone come into the office and try to pitch these, and the build-up was like 3 years. And I kind of said to them, like, the government's coming for you, man. Like, this is not going to, they're not going to let people continue to flip these pieces of paper for hundreds of thousands of dollars tax-free. They're going to lock this down. And where it is entirely speculative, that to me makes a bit of sense. I guess my question would be, when you buy new construction, there's HST on that purchase, or sales tax on that purchase. Then when you reassign it for, say, $100,000 more, is it going to be additional HST on that $100,000? I guess that's probably what it would be, which makes sense, because the true value of that new construction wasn't capturing all of the HST components. So, we say HST out here because it's harmonized blended tax. But I actually
HST as well. Yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay. So this is one I actually feel makes sense and was legitimate, because a lot of these projects, the only reason they were getting out of the ground was because they had a bunch of pre-sales from people who had zero intent of ever closing on those properties.
Does that not make you nervous though? Okay, so like here's the thing, is that there's going to be some turbulent. I mean, whatever, 2025 is when we can finally get rid of these people in government right now. I don't know what they're doing, but we can't get rid of them until 2025. So we are going to be in for a ride. How much of a ride, I don't know. But to me, like, there is investments that make sense, and then there's investments that are very speculative in certain times. Yeah. And this buying and waiting, and then your only exit being to assign it, and buying a lot of these where you don't expect to close. You have no clue what's going to be the situation, the market, the rates, the mortgage lending in 3 years from now.
This is when they pitched it at our office. I was like, I don't know about this, guys.
The one thing I'll say for value, I like assignments. I think it does suck that the prices go up a ton on the end consumer.
Well, you're talking assignments that are done in 3 to 6 months on existing product.
But even for the condos.
Product, but are you just planning on flipping the contract, or are you planning on closing? Because if you can at least close, but there's what I don't like is people that are buying like 10 of them and their only exit is going to be to assign it. That you never know. And if you can't assign it because we're in a different market at that point in time, you're closing on all these 10 and you're losing a lot of money.
Totally.
So I totally agree with that. So the two things. So I personally have not done pre-construction condos with the long ones. I've done existing stuff and I've reassigned it within 3 to 6 months. And I actually did do, we basically boiled it back. So if I made whatever it was, let's say $115K, we took the 15 and labeled it as HST.
You did?
We did, yeah.
Oh.
But that's because we ran through a sales corporation. So it kind of made sense as active business income, and like I was charging it as a service. That's why we did it. Right, but looking back on it, it also does kind of make sense. But more so, the only reason I'm okay with the condo flipping thing, outside of the fact that I think it's a bit nuts that they put down 10%, let's say it'd be $50,000 deposit, and they flip them over for another $100,000 a year later, is it's like any other product. You sometimes do need a middle wholesaler, because unfortunately, the average consumer doesn't necessarily have the foresight or is not prepared to buy their home 3 years in advance. Yeah. And so this allows these buildings to get out of the ground, and then there's product available. It's like a superstore, right? Like, I don't know that I'm going to want chips on the weekend, and so I can't pre-order my chips direct from Lay's. So Superstore orders 100 bags, they throw them on the shelf, and then I can buy one. And I'm paying a markup. Like, Lay's is only getting $1, Superstore's getting the other $1.
I love this analogy.
But it's the same kind of thing to me. So that's why I'm like, that's the only reason I'm okay with it. But it is nuts, and I do know a lot of these people are putting them under contract with no intent to close. So I'm like, it allows the inventory to go up.
And to your point, we're saying that we need more inventory. And if these guys cannot sell these pre-construction things en masse, they cannot get financing and the building will not get built. And then we have a different problem. Yeah. But it's hard because they are trying to build in. Otherwise, you're saying, we want to build in 3 years worth of appreciation. We've got to price them at this price
Yeah.
in order to get the end value.
And they'd never sell.
And they would never sell. So this is another scenario where, depending on how this is handled, it could actually stifle, like it's going to lower the returns on these assignments, which could in turn lower the number of new constructions built, new construction units
That's a
built.
good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
a good point to look at it that way.
So, but anyways, I was just thinking about like that when I had that
price
moment.
of Lay's chips.
But the chips are crazy. Going to our next one, and we've talked about this a bit before, the Home Buyers Bill of Rights. It was quite a laid out document with some pretty serious stuff thrown in there. The biggest one, and Chandler and I were freaking out about it, and I don't know if you looked at it too much, is the idea of removing blind bidding, using an open bidding system online where everyone can see it. And
Have you heard about this yet?
I don't know if you,
I have. I mean, I think they do it in Australia, right?
They
And I don't
do.
think it's in Australia.
It isn't currently, but we're going to talk a lot about that. But this is getting picked up a lot this week's news cycle because they kind of snuck this little release out there. And like all these things, they don't say how it's going to be implemented, who's going to be implementing it, when is it going to be implemented. They just like, hey, by the way, we're doing this, we think at some point. And the ramifications could be huge, right? And buyers want this to have transparency. But what do you think it's going to do for the market? Do you think it's going to slow things down? Do you think it's not going to make any dent? I mean, you're out there buying, right? Would you like to see this?
are sellers not going to subscribe?
I mean, I think I'm still up in the air about how this is all going to work out because, you know, if you've got like it's just like an auction, right? Like sometimes the auction could make it way worse because you've got, you know, 3, 4, 5 people that are like, I'm getting this house no matter what, and then they keep bidding and bidding and bidding. Is it going to make a difference? I don't know. The only thing I would just say is like look at Australia and just see if it helped. I don't know if it really helped, to be honest. I don't think it has. I think it's made it worse, if anything. But you know, from a buyer standpoint, you know, would I like to see potentially, you know, if it was just like the one outlier, right? That's like 100K more and everybody else was in the same place. Like, could that help that person? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I have an opinion about that one yet. I think it could go both ways, but it'll be interesting if they do that. How they're going to implement it and how fast, I don't know.
That's
What do you guys think?
That's an interesting thought because it's like, I know we always talk about how like when there's 20 offers, like 17 of them or 18 of them are all, no, 15 of them are in the same wheelhouse. A couple are just super low and then a couple are super high. But they're not always super high. And sometimes the outliers, maybe there's not that many outliers. And it might actually, like you're saying, it might eventually end up causing the opposite where I know a lot of people are like, oh, if I known it was going to go for
Exactly.
that.
That's what I was about to ask. How many times has buyer said, well, if I knew it was only going to go for that, I would have gone $7,000 higher. It's like, well,
Right.
now you will know and you
And
will
it'll
have
just
that
keep,
option.
It'll
Yeah.
just keep like ticking up. So it might end up actually being, I guess, a benefit for sellers, but it could end up actually pushing things up even more so because everyone knows what's going for. But I think it'll help to like level things out a little bit.
It'll improve the trust factor because right now there's a lot
Yeah.
of mistrust of the industry and of sellers and of agents, and so it'll hopefully improve that. But again, they just threw that out there to the world that hey, we're gonna look at doing this, and no one really knows.
Vote, right? Is it just something else to throw in the bucket so that people that are trying to buy their first home are always being outbid, and they're like, oh, this would help.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Like I like this is hugely politically motivated. I mean, we're having a situation here where we're going to be taxing out of province people, and these are a lot of people who come here in the summer months, similar to you've got that area that you're investing in as people go there. A lot of people come to these small areas of Nova Scotia and they spend a whole summer there and they pour money into that economy, both in terms of consumer restaurants, the products they buy, but also they donate to the charities there locally. They take part in the local theater, like all of these things that help these
Contribute
communities
towards local
thrive.
improvement.
And in a total publicity stunt to pander to voters who are experiencing housing crisis in urban areas, they do this thing that just hurts these other places, and it's so frustrating.
That's a 5% increase, right? That they were on a 5% additional tax on anybody that doesn't permanently live there.
5 on the D, transfer 2% on your ongoing
Annual.
property tax.
What? Yeah, and you guys already have one, correct? But it's for foreign nationals.
Have one what?
You don't have
buyer's tax.
They don't have an interprovincial one, but they do have a foreign buyer's tax in Toronto, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's foreign national. How much is the foreign national tax?
I want to say, I think it was 15% when Kathleen put
Yeah,
it together.
something like that, yeah.
That's insane on a house. Holy.
Well, but again, these are for houses for people that are not living there, right? Like these are pure investment housing, which probably isn't as big of a part of the market as we would think. But this is where we're saying it to other provinces. We're just like flat out, like,
right. This. I think it's inter-province is way worse than foreign. Because here's the thing: if you're somebody in China that wants to get your money out of China because you just want it to be safe, a 15% increase is probably not going to do much. But then like they go somewhere else. They doesn't have to be. I think at the end of the day, like that percentage is so small. They're unfortunately, I think they're just targeting the wrong things, or they're just targeting things that they think that their voters are going to be
targeting the media to target voters is what they're doing. But I mean, these people that come here all summer, they don't use our healthcare system. They don't use our school system. Like they don't use any of our, resources really. Right?
Yeah.
All they do is bring money, and we're like, bring more.
Yeah, the other
right? Give us
province
more.
does.
Like it's anyway. It's sad.
Next one we have on the list. This one I'm gonna skip. This one we didn't really get too much information on, but just making buildings and homes greener. I think that's good, honestly. Like, although it's gonna drive up the cost of the houses, a lot of the new homes are built pretty thin. Let's say.
People always criticize new construction. It's so much better than old construction.
It is, but I still think it could be a lot better.
Sure, but we have to realize like we can either make the world super green or we can make the world super affordable. They are not going to be the same, and this is an ongoing struggle.
Anyways, moving on to the next one. So it says a one-time $500 payment to individuals facing housing affordability challenges.
That should do it.
Yeah, I don't know. Again,
affordability challenges, and they need that 500. They're facing a lot of other challenges, right? Is that really going to be applying to anything?
No.
I don't know how it's going to change. I feel like this again is that jab for like a voter person, like to get the vote. It's like, if we send everyone $500, a few of them will be happy and they'll show up and be interested.
Is it affordability to buy or affordability to rent?
I think it's to rent. I think it's sort of like if you are housing compromised or housing at risk, you'll qualify for this. And you'll get that check and it'll come like courtesy of the Liberals and the federal government. You'll be like, yeah, man, like this is what I'm talking about. Like
a $500 bill with Trudeau's face.
Yeah.
This is these.
That system. They really need to fix like the Residential Tenancies Act and the board and like make things like, a little bit easier if there's a non-paying tenant for us to be able to remove them properly without having to wait 10 months. Because now, like I think that like we're even more diligent and picky on who we have come in. So
100%.
like probably somebody that needs that 500, may not even qualify based on, their income criteria and different things that we look at, because we have to make sure that we're going to be, okay to get paid.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
And all this stuff, all the government should be doing is focusing on off-market, publicly provided housing to meet deep affordability. But that we've talked
It's
about
nuts too, because it sounds like it's only $500, but it's also like it always ends up being like $50 million that they set aside, and I'm like, could that not go? Like, wouldn't have strength to use that towards, or even just building something or putting it towards something a little bit more functional?
So
the 500 is going to get burnt in 2
to
seconds.
your point, like just to roll out that tax collection program, right, of whatever amount, they're spending $700,000, which we know its government's going to end up being about $1.5 million, just to roll that program out to collect these taxes from people who are from outside of the province. So they're going to spend $1 million
getting it in place
to try to get this thing in place, which is going to have really negative ramifications. Like maybe put that $1 million towards actual housing somewhere.
The only thing I can sort of think is it gives a bit of economic growth because you're hiring some people and all that. Like, that's how the government can inject money while creating work.
Man, but like the economic growth was already happening because those people were coming to those towns and spending money. True. Right? Like these towns do not want this. And it's like, whoa, like why are you making our area more expensive for these people when we are actively trying to bring them here?
Yeah.
Actively. Like when the economy dipped over in Europe, the decline in the tourism industry in these countries was terrible, or in these like little areas was terrible, because that was their whole economy for 6 months of the year, were these Europeans, these Americans, and these folks coming to these communities and spending money, right?
Yeah.
And we're basically now saying, well, we don't want them anyway, and that's a decision made at the provincial level without actually consulting those small towns. But
just making me think though, what you're doing with the resort would make more sense now, because nobody's going to want to buy, but they will still come. But they'll do short-term rentals or month-long rentals or 2-month-long rentals.
But you can't buy anything here because we would also tax you.
Yeah, true. Anyway, so on to the next one. The next one I think actually has some value. It's a new TFSA program. I'm not sure if you saw that, but they're kind of blending the TFSA and the RRSP. They're saying first-time home buyers will be able to save up to $40,000 tax-free, and claim the contributions as deductions on their tax returns, and then also any money that's made within that TFSA can then would be withdrawn towards buying a home and not be taxed as well.
So can I ask a follow-up question? Because I'm not that familiar with this one. So
Yeah.
essentially, they're saying that you can withdraw the tax-free savings amount,
Yeah.
and you don't lose that contribution room for that year. Is that maybe what it is? Because you can withdraw tax-free from the tax-free savings account anyways.
Yeah. So, but what I guess the difference really becomes now is there's also saying I think it's tax free on both ends. Basically, you can put the money in the account tax free as if it's an RRSP, and then you can withdraw it as if it's a TFSA. So they're blending the two as a hybrid, which I do think is good. I guess if they're looking at a couple, I was gonna say because the other thing is the average home price is like $800,000 across Canada, so 40 grand is not gonna even cover your down payment and closing costs.
Yeah, I mean even 5%.
Yeah, and on the flip end of it though is like there's so many people that say like if I could save $40,000 to begin with, like I maybe wouldn't be in this challenge, right? Like
True enough.
But it's going to help some people, and that one has very little outside ramifications, right? It impacts the people that are in that situation, but it doesn't damage it. It's not at the expense of anything else, and
It's
it doesn't
better
take a
than
lot
not.
of and doesn't take a lot of
And there's sorry, I was going to say there's a lot of people that have like companies matches too, right? So they can probably save it faster that way.
yeah.
Combination between and you get no that's actually pretty. Yeah, I like that. Basically, they made it even better than it was, and they've removed taxes from both ends because really the TFSA and the RSP were I don't want to say a trick, but like you're still just paying the taxes. Like it was at one end.
It's deferred taxes.
It was just
Yeah,
deferred
yeah,
taxes.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
all it really was.
I know there was a subheading in this too, like a link from this article that's like, could a new tax on homes worth $1 million and up help fix Canada's housing crisis? This is the solution right now because the government's pitting, those who have property, especially higher end property, and those that are struggling to get property. They're pitting them against each other, and this idea is like tax. Normally people hate taxes, but when it's a tax on someone you perceive as your enemy, all of a sudden people love the tax, as if. We all say like, the government's wasteful. They don't implement things effectively. They're not reliable. They waste these tax dollars. Oh, but you're going to tax my enemy? Oh yeah, tax them through the roof. It'll be great.
And this is for like primary residences. They're like, so sales on your primary that you've been living. So somebody could be banking on this as their retirement income.
Yeah. Like in our area, we've got this section of town. It's the most expensive real estate, the South End. And there are little widowers in there, who've been there for 40 years, and they're maybe now at the point where they can go do some sort of assisted living, and that would all be paid for by the fact that they can get well over $1 million for their property. They're coming for that. Like they're doing a new study on the implications of a capital gains tax on primary resident sales. Like this is happening. If we continue to keep the Liberals in power, they are going to charge you capital gains on the sale of your house. Like, know that. Don't be naive. And maybe you think that's awesome, but if you're a homeowner, I can't imagine any scenario in which you think that is a good idea, but that is what you are voting for. Unequivocally, they're studying it. They're continuing to study it. They do not do these studies without the plan to implement. And how that's going to affect aging demographic, it's terrible. And again, what do we think they're going to do with this extra tax money? Have they done anything awesome with the tax money we've given them so far? Right? We've been giving them this tax money for decades. Have they fixed housing yet?
We're in this situation right now because of all the money printing that they're doing, right? And so, like, of course, they have to get it back in some way. I think this is going to piss off a lot of people, especially in bigger markets, because there isn't anything you can buy for less than $1 million. So, like you think of the GTA, you're not really buying anything for less than that at this point in time, unless you're in a condo potentially.
Yeah.
So I don't see that going so well. And like, I don't know how, like what the percentage is exactly in 2022 with like renters versus like homeowners in certain pockets where things are majoritively over $1 million, but it's like your birthright as a Canadian that like your primary residence is untaxed. Like you go to the US and they have like 1031 exchanges. Like we don't have any of that. So, and that's for investing in a different thing. I get it. But like, ultimately I think this is going to actually hurt them potentially for, all of the votes that they're getting. And let's face it, like a lot of the votes that they're getting right now is in the GTA. That I think that's one of the reasons that they're still in power right now, because a lot of provinces didn't vote back Trudeau.
Yeah. So I'm kind of want to go off here for a sec, but like these taxes they do. They always actually cause an increase in the price eventually. So you reference a 1031 exchange in the States because of that, and everyone's like, "Oh, the rich people are saving all these taxes." The average rent in the States is like half of what it is in Canada. The average home cost is like half of what it is in Canada, because all that happens when these taxes have to be paid is they just get levied into the price. Like
Totally.
Like anyone who wants to
it's going
sell.
to change the number that the person is going to need to get for the property in order to sell it. Every time we approach an investor about selling their investment property,
based on the capital
they're
gains.
I would love to sell it to you for this, but that damn capital gains, I got to sell it for more. How is that going to be different when people go to sell their home and they're like, I would have sold it for this, but man, with these taxes, I got to sell it for this. And that is a basic, like, economics 101. Like, the first week of the course, you should be able to take that knowledge from it. And it's just absent in a lot of the rationale for what they do here.
It's going to cause the opposite. That's the thing that I don't think anyone's looking at. And again, I like that you referenced 1031, because that is like a proof of concept that, yeah, it saves tax for the investors, which boils directly down to the people renting. And that's why you can literally go to almost any American city outside of like downtown New York and rent a place for $700.
It also increases
That's nice.
inventory, right? And increases the inventory changing hands, which gives more people an opportunity to have ownership and brings down prices.
Yeah.
I mean, we covered so much here. I know you're super busy and probably off to something else. But super high level, where do you suggest people invest their money right now? Like location, type of property? Like, what are you seeing out there that gets you excited?
I mean, I don't think that there's like a specific strategy, but I would say, you know, anything that like on the exit that you can add some value and recycle your money without banking on appreciation that still cash flows, I like, right? So value add. I mean, we got, you know, properties that we're converting to small multis. We have, I think there's a great opportunity that's still very untapped of commercial conversions to residential. We're working on a 22 unit, in Hamilton on that. I think there's also still an opportunity to be creative with the cash flow and go into that short-term, midterm. Again, short-term is not for every single market. You've got to just make sure you don't have any bylaws, but, you know, increase your cash flow so that you can take some of the increases that are going to happen with the rates, because they are going to go up, and you don't want to be all in one type of market. So I think it's important to diversify, but also, you know, this is where you might not want to do certain things like buying $1 million condo, hoping to sign it and buying 5 of those, you know, like, so I think there's strategies for this time. We're going into some turbulent times. Exactly how and how it's going to all play out, no idea. But if you buy for cash flow and you buy knowing that you're going to do some renos or some value add and other are, you know, around a certain price, you work backwards. I mean, you're mitigating some of the risks. Again, there's always risks, but that's probably what I would do. And if you can take one of those units or 2 or 3, boost up cash flow with a short midterm type of strategy. I mean, again, there's lots of strategies, but that's the one I like the most right now.
Location wise, are you saying, like we kind of discussed it earlier, like it's a little scary if you're in these places that are $1 million a unit or $800,000 a unit? Would you suggest to people to say, like, everyone says location, and if there is a bit of a slowdown, a bit of a downturn, location is very prevalent and important, but to get into those areas now is expensive. So would you say don't be afraid to go into maybe smaller communities or slightly outside of town?
Yeah, because ultimately your price of acquisition is probably going to be less, and you're probably going to cash flow better in those smaller areas. And here's the thing: is if the markets go down, I think I was reading something that said that 24%. Is that possible? Sure. But you don't realize that loss unless you sell and you panic, right? And so you're going to be able to take that up and down if you've got, you know, a property in, as an example, maybe one of those smaller markets where you're at least covering all your costs and then some every single month. And if the rates go up, 3, 4, 5 times, you're still cash flowing. So I think it's just about, being diligent. Don't overpay for something. Don't get into the weeds of things like overbidding and being the 20th, best offer. I won the bid and I was the top, the top of 20. That's usually not a good sign. And the other thing too is, like, do you want all your money in the country, right? I'm considering Costa Rica and, other opportunities where very easily
Pura Vida. Love Costa Rica.
Exactly, right? So like I'm working with somebody that's looking at a 4-unit build out, but ultimately,
you want partners? You want partners? Hit us up.
I just came back. I was looking down there as well.
We love Costa Rica.
Let's talk for sure. But here's the thing. Is I don't know what's going to happen to this country. Are we going to be locked down in the fall again? If so, I want to be able to leave. And I also like that there are going to be some countries, again, this is not just Costa Rica, I'm sure there's other ones, that, with $150,000 investment, just $150,000, there's other ways you can go there. You can apply for your residency. And then once you have your temporary one, you can apply for your
Oh my
So
God, I could be Costa Rican.
I do that with a certain amount of income per month, and it's very doable. So I'm like, I want to have at least an out, because I'm not going to go through another year of these nonsense lockdowns. Again, my opinion, you know, I don't want to offend anybody, but like, you know, I don't think that this was necessarily the right strategy to go about. And so if I need to get out of the country next time this happens, I want to have an out.
Oh my gosh.
Agreed.
We joked before that we need to start charging Tourism Costa Rica because we're promoting the country so much. But seriously, love Costa Rica. Would love to. You keep us posted on that because you know I know you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, but let us know.
We'll rent one of your units.
Listen, I'm so excited about everything that's going great for you. I'm glad to see it. I think it's a really cool story. Really quick, we like to ask people what success means to them. So what does success mean to you?
I mean, for me, it's about lifestyle, right? It's about having not another 9-to-5 job or 12-to-12 job or however it is. And I think it's just about like enjoying my life and just, you know, enjoying the people around me, being happy, doing what I want to do, enjoying my lifestyle, being on the dock in the summer. You know, that to me, that is success, having good relationships, having good health. You know, the financial success comes with it, but I think it's just important not to be, you know, only one, you know, of the pillars successful. So I'm a big proponent of like time and freedom and lifestyle. And so that to me is much more important than any specific one deal. You do the deals for the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is your partner still a cop, or did he just?
He is actually for the last month, and then he's taking a year off, and hopefully he'll be off for even longer. So
Awesome.
that actually just got approved, and yeah, it's exciting. So we,
That's awesome.
which is now, you know, allowing us to potentially, while we're moving to the cottage and all that good stuff, but allowing ourselves to, you know, maybe leave the country altogether if we want to.
Very, very cool.
That's exciting.
Let's just wrap up here, but tell everyone where they can find you, handle, where they can track you down.
I mean, the best thing would be my website, sarahlarbi.com. We are putting together a retreat for investors and entrepreneurs August 9th, 10th, and 11th at the resort. So anybody that is interested, spots are limited, but it's going to be like all inclusive. We got like my chef that's making all the food. We've got like unlimited drinks, like alcoholic. We've got like a pontoon boat. We're going to do workshops, real estate talks, obviously. We've got some great speakers and all that stuff. So if they want to know more about that, they can send me an email, sarah@sarahlarbi.com. I used to give out my Instagram, but you know, my Instagram got hacked and Instagram's not helping me. So unless I get it back, I probably won't go back on it for a while.
Right on.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, that is frustrating. We haven't had that actually. I haven't thought about that. But yeah, thanks for coming on. That's super exciting. I'm with Chandler. I think it's neat that you started from a place that people can see as very attainable, and then also did a very different path than the two of us, because I think everyone's heard our story 100 times. So it's neat to see that someone did like the short term, midterm, and that allowed you to kind of grow through. And now you're really doubling down on that by building the resort and kind of going forward.
And everyone always asks about the financing, where'd you get the money and all that stuff. So everyone check out the website, reach out to Sarah, get a little bit more info. So
Amazing.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thanks, Sarah.
guys.
thank you. Thanks so much for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. Don't forget to subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the links below. Thanks again for checking us out.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.